My daughter died while I was 8,000 miles away, fighting a war that suddenly meant nothing. Hit like, subscribe for more betrayal stories, and comment your location. Emma's last text came through at 0347 hours Afghanistan time. I was on patrol outside Kandahar when my encrypted phone buzzed. Most messages from home waited until I was back at base, but something made me check it right there in that dusty alley. Daddy, the stars are so bright tonight. Mommy gave me special milk to help me sleep better. I love you to the moon and back. P.S. Remember our secret code? 527, sweet dreams. I stared at those words, and my blood turned to ice. 527 wasn't our secret code. Our real code was 413. We'd practiced it dozens of times before my deployment. If Emma ever felt unsafe, if Rebecca or anyone hurt her, she'd use 527 to let me know. It meant danger. It meant help me. But by the time I received that message, Emma was already gone. The call came 6 hours later. Rebecca's voice, thick with tears that sounded too perfect, too rehearsed. Jake, there's been an accident. Emma, there was a fire. She didn't make it out. I remember dropping to my knees in the sand, my rifle clattering beside me. My squad leader, Sergeant Martinez, found me there 20 minutes later, still holding the phone, still staring at Emma's last words. The house caught fire around midnight. Rebecca sobbed into the phone. I was at Marcus's place. I got the call from the fire department. They said she died from smoke inhalation. She wouldn't have suffered, Jake. Please tell me you're coming home. Marcus, her new boyfriend of 6 months. The construction worker she'd started dating 2 weeks after I deployed. The same Marcus who Emma never mentioned in any of our video calls, even when I asked about him directly. I requested emergency leave within the hour, but the flight home took 36 hours. 36 hours of replaying that text message, of remembering Emma's voice during our last video call 3 days earlier. She'd seemed quieter than usual, kept looking over her shoulder. When I asked if everything was okay, she'd smiled that forced smile kids use when they're protecting adults from the truth. Everything's fine, Daddy. Mommy's really happy with Marcus. They talk about the future a lot. The funeral director met me at the airport with Rebecca. She fell into my arms, her performance flawless. Neighbors, friends, even strangers offered condolences to the grieving mother who'd lost her precious daughter in a tragic accident. But I knew better. Emma was the smartest 8-year-old I'd ever known. She could recite fire safety rules in her sleep. She knew to stay low, to feel doors for heat, to never hide in closets or under beds. Emma would never have been trapped by an accidental house fire. And she'd never forget our real secret code. That night, alone in my hotel room, I read Emma's message one more time. The stars are so bright tonight. Emma's bedroom faced west. She couldn't see stars from her window. Mommy gave me special milk. Emma was lactose intolerant. Rebecca knew that. My daughter hadn't died in an accident. She'd been murdered. And somehow, with her final breath, she'd managed to tell me exactly what happened. Before we dive deeper, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more intense betrayal and revenge stories. And let us know where you are listening in the comments. The question wasn't whether Rebecca and Marcus had killed my little girl. The question was how I was going to prove it, and what I was going to do to them when I did. The viewing was Rebecca's masterpiece performance, and I had a front row seat to watch her destroy any memory of the daughter I loved. She'd dressed Emma in a pink dress I'd never seen before, with makeup that made my 8-year-old look like a doll. Rebecca stood beside the casket in a black dress that probably cost more than my monthly combat pay, dabbing her eyes with tissues while accepting condolences from people who barely knew Emma's middle name. She was such a bright light, Rebecca whispered to Mrs. Henderson from next door. Always so curious about everything. Just last week she asked me what heaven looked like. It's like she somehow knew. Mrs. Henderson squeezed Rebecca's hand. You're being so strong, dear. Emma would be proud of how you're handling this. I wanted to vomit. Emma had asked me about heaven during our last video call, not Rebecca. She wanted to know if her grandfather was really there waiting for her, if dogs went to heaven too. Rebecca hadn't been part of that conversation. She'd been too busy in the next room, laughing with Marcus about something on TV. Marcus stood behind Rebecca like a devoted boyfriend, his hand protectively on her shoulder. He wore an ill-fitting black suit and practiced sympathy face. When people asked how he was coping, he'd say things like, "I only knew Emma for a few months, but she was already like a daughter to me." Lies. All of it. During the service, I sat in the front row and studied every face in that room. Rebecca's sister Jennifer flew in from Seattle, genuinely crying for the niece she'd actually spent time with. Emma's teacher, Miss Rodriguez, brought Emma's entire third-grade class. Those kids understood loss in a way adults pretend to forget. They drew pictures of Emma with angel wings and left them on her casket. But Marcus's family? Nowhere to be found. His friends? Didn't exist, apparently. The man had been dating Rebecca for 6 months, living in my house with my daughter for the past 3, and not one person from his life showed up to mourn the child he claimed to love. After the burial, people gathered at Rebecca's house. My house, technically, since I was still paying the mortgage while deployed. I walked through those rooms like a stranger, seeing everything Emma had lived through in her final months. Emma's bedroom had been completely redecorated. The military-themed posters I'd hung with her were gone, replaced with generic princess decorations. Her bookshelf, once filled with the adventure stories we read together over video calls, now held romance novels that belonged to Rebecca. Even Emma's photographs with me had been moved to a small corner, barely visible. We thought it would help her adjust, Rebecca explained when she caught me staring. She was having nightmares about you not coming home. Marcus suggested we make the room more peaceful. Another lie. Emma never had nightmares about my deployment. She was proud of my service, always asking about my missions, drawing pictures of helicopters and tanks to send me. The only nightmares she'd mentioned were about the man who lives here now, Marcus. I found Emma's journal hidden behind her dresser, exactly where I'd taught her to keep important things. Rebecca hadn't thought to look there, too busy erasing every trace of the daughter who'd inconvenienced her new relationship. Emma's handwriting told the real story. March 15th. Marcus yelled at me today for leaving my backpack in the living room. Mommy didn't say anything. I miss Daddy. March 28th. Marcus said Daddy probably won't come back from the war. Mommy told him that might be better for everyone. I don't understand. April 12th. They talk about money a lot when they think I'm sleeping. Marcus says I'm expensive. Mommy says there are ways to fix expensive problems. May 3rd. Marcus grabbed my arm today when I spilled juice. It left marks. I wanted to tell Daddy during our video call, but Mommy was watching. She told Marcus I bruise easily, just like she does. Page after page of a child documenting her own slow torture. Emma had been systematically isolated from everyone who loved her, gaslit into believing her father might abandon her, and physically abused by a man who saw her as nothing but an obstacle to his relationship with her mother. The final entry was dated 3 days before the fire. May 20th. I heard them talking about insurance money again. Marcus said accidents happen all the time to kids whose daddies are at war. Mommy said I eat too much and cost too much, and maybe it's time to think about the future. I'm scared. I want Daddy to come home now. I closed the journal, my hands shaking. Emma had known. Somehow, my brilliant little girl had figured out they were planning to kill her, and she documented everything like the detective stories she loved to read. But the most damning evidence was tucked inside the back cover. A life insurance policy Rebecca had taken out on Emma just 2 months after I deployed. $500,000, with Rebecca as the sole beneficiary. The policy specifically covered accidental death, with double payment for deaths that occurred while the insured's father was deployed overseas. They'd planned this for months. Waited until I was too far away to protect her. Calculated exactly how much Emma's death would be worth to them. I photographed every page of that journal, then put it back exactly where I'd found it. Rebecca and Marcus couldn't know I'd found it yet. I needed more evidence, more proof that would convince investigators who'd already closed the case as an accident. As guests began leaving, Rebecca found me in Emma's room. She stood in the doorway, studying my face like she was trying to read my thoughts. "She loved you so much, Jake," Rebecca said softly. Even at the end, she kept talking about Daddy coming home. "What exactly did she say at the end?" I asked, watching her reaction carefully. Rebecca's expression flickered for just a moment. She was unconscious from the smoke. The firefighters said she never woke up. But Emma's text message proved otherwise. She'd been awake, alert, and terrified enough to send me a coded cry for help while Rebecca and Marcus thought she was safely sedated. "I think I need some time alone," I told Rebecca, "to process everything." She nodded, playing the understanding ex-wife perfectly. "Of course. Take all the time you need. Just, please don't do anything reckless. Emma wouldn't want you to throw your life away over this." As Rebecca left the room, I realized she'd just made her first mistake. She was already worried about what I might do, which meant she knew I had reasons to be suspicious. Good. Let her worry. Let both of them spend sleepless nights wondering what I knew and what I was planning. They'd killed my daughter for insurance money, thinking distance and military protocol would protect them from justice. They had no idea what a father's love could accomplish when everything else had been stripped away. The phone was Emma's lifeline, and it was about to become their death sentence. 3 days after the funeral, I remembered the old iPhone I'd given Emma before deploying. It was supposed to be for emergencies only, a direct line to me that Rebecca didn't know about. I'd hidden it in Emma's teddy bear, Mr. Whiskers, the one she'd had since she was 3. Rebecca had thrown Mr. Whiskers in a donation bag, along with most of Emma's baby toys. I found the bag in the garage, waiting for Goodwill pickup. My hands trembled as I cut open the bear's back seam and found the phone exactly where I'd sewn it 6 months ago. The battery was dead, but it held a charge when I plugged it in. Emma had been busy with that phone, much busier than I'd ever imagined. She'd recorded everything. The first recording was from 3 weeks before the fire. Emma's whispered voice came through the tiny speaker. "Daddy, I'm hiding in my closet. They're fighting about money again." Then Rebecca's voice, sharp and angry. "I can't keep pretending to be mother of the year, Marcus. She's bleeding us dry. Groceries, clothes, school supplies. Do you know what kids cost?" Marcus responded with ice in his voice. "There's a solution to every problem, babe. Insurance exists for a reason. Don't even joke about that." "Who's joking? Accidents happen every day, especially to kids whose daddies are playing soldier halfway around the world." My daughter had been recording her own death sentence. The second recording was from a week later. Emma had gotten smarter about hiding, positioning the phone under her bed during one of their late-night conversations. "The policy kicked in last month," Rebecca said. $500,000, plus the military death benefit if something happens while Jake's deployed. "That's almost $1 million total," Marcus whistled. "We could disappear with that kind of money. Start over somewhere warm. She's still Jake's daughter, Marcus. People would ask questions. Not if it looked accidental. House fires happen all the time, especially in old houses with faulty wiring. You've thought about this?" "Baby, I've thought about everything." I had to stop the recording. My vision blurred with rage, so pure it felt like poison in my veins. They discussed murdering my child like they were planning a vacation. But Emma wasn't finished exposing them. The third recording was from 2 days before the fire. This time, Emma had apparently left the phone running during dinner. Her small voice came first. "Can I call Daddy tonight? I miss him." "Daddy's busy protecting America," Marcus said with mock patriotism. "He doesn't have time for little girls who can't even clean up their own messes." "Marcus," Rebecca warned. "What?" "She needs to learn the world doesn't revolve around her anymore. Some people have real problems." "I just want to talk to him," Emma pleaded. "Well, life's full of disappointments, kid. Better get used to it." The recording captured Emma crying softly, then Rebecca's footsteps following her to her room. But Rebecca didn't comfort her daughter. Instead, I heard the distinct sound of Emma's bedroom door being locked from the outside. "She's getting too clingy," Rebecca told Marcus when she returned. "Always wanting to call Jake, always asking when he's coming home. Won't be a problem much longer. The sedatives you got, They'll work? Trust me, babe. She won't feel a thing. A little in her bedtime milk. Wait an hour. Then we start the fire in the basement. Electrical short in the old fuse box. By the time the fire department gets here, it'll look like she never had a chance to escape. And where will we be? At my buddy Tony's poker game. 20 witnesses who'll swear we were there all night. They'd planned every detail. The sedatives to keep Emma unconscious. The electrical fire to cover their tracks. The alibi to protect them from suspicion. They'd even practiced Rebecca's grief-stricken mother act. But they'd underestimated my daughter's intelligence and survival instincts. The final recording was from the night Emma died. Her voice was groggy, slurred from whatever drugs they'd given her, but she was fighting to stay conscious. Daddy, if you're hearing this, something bad happened. They gave me medicine that makes me sleepy, but I pretended to drink all the milk. I only had a little bit. I can smell smoke downstairs. They locked my door again. A pause. Then Emma's voice became clearer, more determined. I remember everything you taught me about emergencies. Stay low, check doors for heat, never hide. But Daddy, they won't let me out. The door won't open. I tried the window, but it's too high. The sound of crackling flames grew louder in the background. I'm going to send you our code so you know it wasn't an accident. I love you, Daddy. Tell everyone that Mommy and Marcus did this. Don't let them get away with it. The recording ended with Emma coughing, then silence. My 8-year-old daughter had spent her final moments not just trying to survive, but gathering evidence to ensure her killers would face justice. She'd been braver than most soldiers I'd served with. Now I had their confessions, their motive, and their method. Everything I needed to destroy the people who'd murdered my child while I was fighting for their freedom. Rebecca thought she was the perfect grieving mother. Marcus believed his alibis made him untouchable. They had no idea that Emma had been smarter than both of them combined. Going AWOL was the easiest decision I'd ever made. My commanding officer would understand eventually. If he had a daughter, he'd have done the same thing. I had 48 hours before the military would officially list me as absent without leave. 48 hours to gather evidence that could put Rebecca and Marcus behind bars for life. The local police had closed Emma's case within 24 hours, calling it a tragic accident. They hadn't bothered to investigate because grieving mothers don't usually murder their own children. They'd never dealt with Rebecca Morrison. At 0300 hours, I parked 3 blocks from my old house and approached through the backyard. Rebecca had changed the locks, but she'd forgotten about the loose basement window I'd been meaning to fix before deployment. Emma used to tease me about my procrastination. Now it would help me get justice for her murder. The house still smelled like smoke and death. Insurance investigators had cleared the scene, but yellow tape still blocked Emma's bedroom. I couldn't bring myself to look in there yet. Instead, I headed straight for Rebecca's home office, the room where she handled finances and stored important documents. What I found there painted a picture of calculated greed that made my stomach turn. Rebecca had been researching life insurance policies for months before taking out Emma's policy. Her browser history showed dozens of searches, accidental death insurance payouts, investigating child deaths, how long before insurance pays out, and most damning, statute of limitations on insurance fraud investigation. She'd planned this methodically, researching every angle to ensure she'd get away with murder. In her desk drawer, I found correspondence with 3 different insurance companies. She'd shopped around for the highest payout with the fewest questions. The winning company offered $500,000 for accidental death, with an additional clause paying double if the child's military parent was deployed overseas during the incident. They'd literally bet on my daughter's life while I was serving my country. But the most chilling discovery was Rebecca's notebook, filled with her handwriting detailing Emma's daily routines, sleep schedule, and behavioral patterns. She'd studied her own daughter like a predator stalking prey. Emma drinks warm milk every night at 8:30 p.m. Takes approximately 45 minutes to fall asleep. Heavy sleeper once unconscious. Bedroom door lock installed 3/15. Told Emma it's for her safety. She'd been planning Emma's murder for over 2 months. I photographed everything, then moved to Marcus's belongings. Rebecca had moved him in completely. His clothes in the master bedroom closet, his tools in the garage, his mail being delivered to my address. He'd essentially erased me from my own home while I fought overseas. In Marcus's toolbox, I found the evidence that would seal their fate. A receipt from Walker's pharmacy dated 4 days before the fire. 2 prescriptions, diphenhydramine and lorazepam, both powerful sedatives. Both prescribed under fake names using fraudulent insurance information. The pharmacist's notes were still attached. Customer requested maximum strength. Claimed for elderly parent with severe insomnia and anxiety. Paid cash. Seemed nervous about paperwork. Marcus had literally purchased the drugs used to sedate my daughter before burning her alive. I was photographing the receipt when I heard a car in the driveway. Rebecca was home early from her grief counseling session, the one she attended to maintain her perfect grieving mother image. I had 30 seconds to get to the basement before she unlocked the front door. The house's old wooden floors creaked with every step, but I made it downstairs just as Rebecca entered the kitchen above me. She wasn't alone. Marcus was with her, and they were arguing. "You're being paranoid," Marcus said. "Jake's a soldier boy scout. He trusts authority. If the cops say it was an accident, he'll believe them." "You didn't see his face at the funeral," Rebecca shot back. "He was studying everything, watching everyone." "Jake's not stupid, Marcus. He knows Emma better than anyone." "No. Past tense. The kid's gone, babe. Even if he suspects something, what's he gonna do? He's 8,000 miles away playing G.I. Joe. He's not deployed anymore. He got emergency leave. For how long? I don't know. That's what scares me." They moved into the living room, directly above where I crouched in the basement. I activated my phone's recording app, knowing Emma would have wanted me to document everything. "Maybe we should leave town for a while," Rebecca suggested. "Take a romantic vacation. Let things cool down." "With what money?" "The insurance payout takes 30 days minimum. I have access to Emma's college fund. Jake set it up before deployment. My daughter's college fund. Money I'd saved for years, working double shifts and deployment bonuses, dreaming of the day I'd watch Emma graduate. They wanted to spend it on a vacation to celebrate her murder." "How much?" Marcus asked. 47,000. Enough to disappear until the insurance comes through. "You're brilliant, baby. This is why I love you. Just promise me Jake won't be a problem." Jake Morrison is a broken soldier whose kid died in a tragic accident. If he starts making noise, people will think it's PTSD. Combat stress makes guys see conspiracies everywhere. Perfect cover for us. They were planning to frame my grief as mental illness, discrediting any evidence I might present. Rebecca knew exactly which buttons to push. The concerned ex-wife worried about her unstable veteran ex-husband. "I still think we should have waited longer," Rebecca said. "Made sure he was deployed for the full year. Timing was perfect. Kid was getting too smart, asking too many questions. Another few months, and she might have figured out how to contact child services or that bleeding heart teacher of hers." Miss Rodriguez did seem overly interested in Emma's home life. "See? We did this just in time. Emma was becoming a liability we couldn't control. They talked about murdering my daughter like it was a business decision, calculating risks and benefits with cold precision. These weren't crimes of passion or desperation. They were the methodical actions of predators who saw a child as nothing more than an obstacle to their happiness. I had everything I needed now. Recorded confessions, financial evidence, the murder weapons. Enough to convince any prosecutor that Emma's death was premeditated murder. But as I listened to them planning their victory vacation with my daughter's blood money, I realized something the recordings hadn't captured. They weren't finished. Rebecca kept talking about Jake being a problem and Marcus's confident dismissal of my grief as PTSD symptoms. They were already planning how to handle me if I got too close to the truth. These people had murdered my 8-year-old daughter and were now discussing how to destroy her father if he tried to seek justice. They'd made one critical mistake, though. They assumed I'd play by the rules, work through official channels, trust the system to deliver justice. They'd forgotten that I was a soldier trained to complete missions by any means necessary. And my new mission was simple: make sure Rebecca and Marcus paid for what they'd done to Emma. The system had already failed my daughter once. I wouldn't let it fail her again. Marcus thought he was untouchable, but every predator has a weakness. His was pride. I spent 2 days studying his routine, learning his habits like I'd tracked insurgents in Afghanistan. Marcus worked construction for Hartwell Development, supervising crews building luxury condos on the east side of town. He ate lunch alone every day at 12:30, sitting in his truck behind the job site, scrolling through his phone and smoking cigarettes. Perfect isolation. No witnesses. Just him and me. I'd taped a digital recorder inside my jacket and clipped a backup device to my belt. If Marcus confessed to what he'd done to Emma, I wanted multiple copies of every word. At 12:25, I approached his truck. Marcus looked up from his phone, annoyed by the interruption until he recognized me. His expression shifted to fake sympathy, the same mask he'd worn at Emma's funeral. "Jake, man, I'm so sorry for your loss," he said, rolling down his window. "How are you holding up?" "I've been better," I replied, leaning against his truck. "Mind if we talk? I'm trying to understand what happened that night." Marcus glanced around the empty lot, checking for witnesses. "Sure, brother. Whatever you need." He climbed out of his truck, playing the supportive boyfriend role perfectly. But I noticed how he positioned himself. Feet spread apart, weight balanced, hands loose at his sides. Combat stance. This wasn't his first dangerous conversation. "Rebecca told me you two were at a poker game." I started. "Tony something?" "Tony Marcelli." "Yeah, we were there all night. Probably 20 guys who can vouch for us." "That must have been some game." "What time did it start?" "Around 8. Went until maybe 3 in the morning." I nodded, pretending to accept his story. "Rebecca seems pretty torn up about not being home. Keeps blaming herself." Marcus's mask slipped for just a second. "She shouldn't. Nobody could have predicted what happened." "Predicted what exactly?" "The fire, man. Old electrical systems, you know? Houses built in the 70s are death traps waiting to happen." "Funny thing about that," I said, watching his face carefully. "Emma was terrified of fires. I taught her every safety rule in the book. She could recite fire escape plans in her sleep." "Kids panic," Marcus shrugged. "Fear makes people do stupid things." "Not Emma. She was the smartest 8-year-old I've ever known. If there was a fire, she'd stay calm and follow protocol." Marcus lit a cigarette, buying time to think. "Look, Jake, I know you're hurting. But sometimes bad things just happen. No explanation, no reason. Emma's gone, and torturing yourself with what-ifs won't bring her back." "You're right," I said, changing tactics. "Rebecca's lucky to have someone like you. Taking on a ready-made family can't be easy." Now I had his attention. Marcus straightened up, eager to talk about himself. "It wasn't easy at first," he admitted. "Emma was pretty attached to you. Always talking about daddy this, daddy that. Made it hard for Rebecca and me to connect, you know? Kids adapt, though. Emma seemed to like you during our video calls." Marcus laughed, short and bitter. "That kid never liked me, man. She tolerated me because her mother told her to. But every time you called, every time you sent a care package, it was like starting over from scratch. That must have been frustrating." "Frustrating? Try impossible. You were the hero fighting overseas while I was just the guy trying to make her mother happy. How do you compete with Captain America?" His resentment was bleeding through now, the careful mask cracking. I pushed harder. "Rebecca mentioned Emma was having nightmares about me not coming home." "That's bullshit," Marcus snapped. "Emma's nightmares were about you coming home. About me being kicked out so daddy could play house again." There it was. The truth he'd been hiding behind fake sympathy. "She told you that." "She didn't have to. Kid made it clear every single day that I was temporary. That when daddy came home, everything would go back to the way it was." Marcus took a long drag from his cigarette, lost in his own bitterness. "Rebecca tried to make it work, tried to get Emma to accept me as a father figure. But that kid was stubborn as hell. Never missed a chance to remind me whose house I was living in, whose pictures were still on the walls. Must have put strain on your relationship with Rebecca. You have no idea. Every fight we had came back to Emma. Every plan we made had to revolve around what was best for Emma. We couldn't go anywhere, do anything, without considering how it would affect precious Emma. His voice was getting louder now, months of suppressed anger pouring out. Do you know what it's like to live with someone who treats their 8-year-old like a roommate instead of a child? Rebecca let that kid run our lives. Bedtime stories, weekend activities, vacation plans, everything centered around making Emma happy. Sounds like Rebecca was being a good mother. Good mother? Marcus laughed harshly. Good mothers know when to put their own happiness first. Good mothers don't let their kids sabotage their relationships. Is that what Emma was doing? Sabotaging your relationship. Every damn day. And Rebecca was too guilty about the divorce to see it. Too worried about being the bad guy to discipline her own kid. I could see the moment Marcus realized he'd said too much. His eyes focused on my face, studying my expression. Look, Jake, I didn't mean anything by that. I'm just saying Emma was a challenging kid. Strong-willed, like her father. But it was too late. He'd revealed his true feelings about my daughter, and now I knew exactly what kind of man Rebecca had brought into Emma's life. Strong-willed kids can be difficult, I agreed. Good thing the problem solved itself. Marcus went very still. What's that supposed to mean? Just that Emma's not challenging anyone anymore. Must be a relief for you and Rebecca. That's a terrible thing to say about your own daughter. Is it? You just spent 10 minutes explaining how much easier your life would be without her. Marcus dropped his cigarette and stepped closer. You're putting words in my mouth. Am I? Because it sounds like Emma's death was the best thing that could have happened to your relationship with Rebecca. Accidents happen, Jake. Even to kids who think they're smarter than everyone else. Who said it was an accident? The question hung in the air between us. Marcus realized his mistake immediately, but it was too late to take it back. The fire department said a lot of things. But you just called it an accident before I mentioned how Emma died. Marcus's face went pale. He was trapped and he knew it. Everyone knows it was an accident. Do they? Because from where I'm standing, it sounds like you're awfully relieved that Emma's no longer a problem for you and Rebecca. I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Marcus stared at me for a long moment, weighing his options. Then something shifted in his expression. The mask fell away completely, replaced by cold calculation. You know what, Jake? Yeah, I'm relieved. That kid was a nightmare, and Rebecca was too weak to handle her. Someone had to take control of the situation. Take control how? Marcus smiled, and I saw the real predator underneath the construction worker facade. However, it needed to be handled. Marcus's confession was everything I needed, but I wasn't naive enough to think the civilian justice system would handle this properly. I needed backup from people who understood what real justice looked like. Sergeant First Class Tony Rodriguez answered on the first ring. We'd served 2 tours together in Afghanistan, and he'd saved my life during an IED explosion in Helmand Province. Now he worked military police at Fort Carson, but more importantly, he had connections throughout the veteran community. Morrison, you crazy bastard. Tony's voice came through the encrypted line. Heard about Emma. I'm sorry, brother. How you holding up? I need help, Tony. Off the books. The line went quiet for a moment. What kind of help? I told him everything. Emma's coded message, the insurance policy, the recorded confessions, Marcus's admission of guilt. Tony listened without interruption, his breathing getting heavier with each detail. Jesus Christ, Jake. They killed that little girl for money. $500,000 in insurance, plus her college fund. They were planning to disappear after the payout came through. What do you need from me? Background checks on Marcus Denon and Rebecca. Deep ones. Financial records, criminal history, anything that civilian cops wouldn't dig for. Consider it done. What else? I need surveillance equipment and someone to help me document everything before they destroy evidence. I can get you gear, but Jake, you sure you want to handle this yourself? FBI would take this case seriously. FBI would take 6 months to build a case, assuming they believed me over a grieving mother. These people will be long gone by then. Tony was quiet again. Okay, but you're not doing this alone. I'm calling in some favors. Within 6 hours, my hotel room looked like a military command center. Tony had brought Sergeant Mike Chun, our former communications specialist, and Staff Sergeant Lisa Martinez, who now worked private security. They'd driven up from Colorado with enough surveillance equipment to monitor a small army. This is personal for all of us, Martinez said, setting up digital cameras and recording equipment. Emma was like a niece to the whole unit. We all remember her care packages and video messages. Chin was already running background checks on his laptop. Marcus Denton's got a record, he announced. 2 domestic violence arrests in Texas, both charges mysteriously dropped. One ex-girlfriend filed a restraining order but moved out of state before the hearing. Pattern of abuse, Martinez noted. Probably threatened the women into silence. What about Rebecca? I asked. She's clean on paper, but her financial records are interesting. Chin pulled up bank statements. She's been hemorrhaging money for the past year. Credit cards maxed out, mortgage payments late, car loan in default. Emma was expensive, I said, remembering the recorded conversations. They saw her as a financial burden. Gets worse, Chin continued. Rebecca's been researching bankruptcy law and debt consolidation. She was facing financial ruin before she met Marcus. So Marcus offered her a solution, Martinez said grimly. Kill the kid, collect the insurance, start fresh somewhere new. Tony was studying crime scene photos from the fire department report. Something's not right about the burn patterns, he said. I've seen structural fires in Iraq. This wasn't random electrical failure. What do you mean? Accelerant burns differently than natural fire spread. See these scorch marks on Emma's bedroom walls. Fire burned hottest near her door and window, the 2 escape routes. My blood turned to ice. They trapped her in there. More than that, they made sure she couldn't get out even if she woke up. This was professional-level arson disguised as an accident. Chin pulled up more records. Marcus worked for a demolition company in Texas before moving here. He knows explosives and accelerants. So he had the knowledge to set a fire that would look accidental but guarantee Emma couldn't escape, Martinez summarized. And Rebecca had the inside information about Emma's routines and sleeping habits, I added. Perfect murder team, Tony said darkly. Except they underestimated how smart Emma was. I played them Emma's final recording. The room went completely silent as my daughter's voice filled the space, documenting her own murder with the courage of a soldier twice her age. When it finished, Martinez wiped tears from her eyes. That little girl was braver than most Marines I've served with. She died trying to protect other kids from the same fate, Chin said quietly. She wanted to make sure these monsters couldn't hurt anyone else. Then we finish what she started, Tony declared. Emma did the intelligence gathering. Now we handle the mission completion. Over the next 12 hours, we documented everything. Chun hacked Marcus's laptop and found detailed floor plans of my house, noting escape routes and optimal accelerant placement points. Martinez conducted surveillance on both targets, photographing them spending Emma's college fund money on expensive dinners and shopping sprees. Tony coordinated with his military police contacts, building a case file that civilian investigators couldn't ignore. But the most damning evidence came from an unexpected source. Marcus has been bragging, Martinez reported after following him to a local bar, telling anyone who'll listen how he solved Rebecca's kid problem, and now they're free to live their lives. He's confessing to random strangers? Gets worse. He's drunk texting details to his buddy in Texas. Full admissions about the sedatives, the accelerant placement, even joking about Emma's final moments. Marcus's arrogance was providing the final nails in his coffin. He was so confident he'd gotten away with murder that he couldn't resist bragging about his perfect crime. We've got enough evidence to bury them both, Tony said, reviewing our documentation. Question is, what's the play? Turn everything over to FBI or handle this our way? I looked around the room at my brothers and sister in arms, people who'd risked their lives for each other without question. Emma had died alone, terrorized by monsters who saw her as nothing more than an obstacle to their happiness. We do both, I decided. Build an airtight case for the FBI, while making sure Rebecca and Marcus can't run or destroy evidence. Sounds like a military operation, Chen grinned. Emma was military family, Martinez said firmly. This is how we protect our own. They'd murdered a soldier's daughter while he was deployed defending their freedom. They'd underestimated the bonds that held military families together, the network of veterans who would move heaven and earth to ensure justice for one of their own. Rebecca and Marcus thought they were facing one grieving father. They were about to discover they'd declared war on an entire brotherhood. Sometimes the best way to catch predators is to give them exactly what they want, the chance to feel completely safe. I needed Rebecca and Marcus to believe they'd broken me, that grief had shattered my ability to think clearly. So I became the unstable veteran they expected, the damaged soldier whose trauma made him see conspiracies everywhere. The performance started at Emma's grave. I visited every day for a week, always when I knew Rebecca was watching from her car across the cemetery. I talked to Emma's headstone for hours, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear my delusions about accidents that weren't really accidents. They think they're so smart, baby girl, I said, kneeling beside her grave while Rebecca recorded me on her phone from 50 yards away. But Daddy's going to prove what really happened that night. I made sure to sound just unstable enough to be dismissed as a grief-stricken father losing his grip on reality. Rebecca took the bait immediately, sharing the videos with friends and posting them on social media with captions about worrying about Jake's mental health. The next phase required Tony's help. He called Rebecca directly, identifying himself as my former sergeant and expressing concern about my behavior. Jake's been calling me at all hours, Tony told her, using his most worried voice. Talking about conspiracies, claiming Emma's death wasn't accidental. I'm concerned he might hurt himself. Or someone else. I've been worried too, Rebecca replied, playing the concerned ex-wife perfectly. He seems to think Marcus and I had something to do with what happened. It's heartbreaking to see him like this. Has he made any specific threats? Not directly, but he follows us around town, shows up at Marcus's work site. Yesterday, he cornered Marcus and started asking strange questions about that night. I think Jake needs professional help, Tony suggested. Maybe voluntary commitment until he can process his grief properly. I've thought about it, but I don't want to betray him. He's Emma's father, and he's suffering. Perfect. Rebecca was now on record expressing concern about my mental stability while positioning herself as the loyal ex-wife, trying to protect everyone involved. She'd walked right into the trap. That evening, I escalated the performance. I showed up at their favorite restaurant drunk, loudly accusing them of murder while other diners watched in horror. Marcus played his part beautifully, calmly trying to reason with the unstable veteran, while Rebecca tearfully begged me to get help. Restaurant security escorted me out while Rebecca comforted other patrons, explaining how deployment trauma had damaged my ability to cope with Emma's death. She even gave interviews to local news stations, expressing concern for my welfare while subtly suggesting my accusations were symptoms of PTSD. Jake is a good man who served our country with honor, she told the cameras. But losing Emma has broken something inside him. He needs help, not judgment. The media ate it up. Local veterans' struggles with daughter's tragic death became the narrative, with Rebecca cast as the understanding ex-wife trying to help her mentally ill former husband. Meanwhile, Tony, Chun, and Martinez continued documenting everything. They'd installed micro cameras throughout Rebecca's house, planted listening devices in Marcus's truck, and were recording every conversation between the two killers. What they captured was exactly what we'd hoped for. Jake's completely lost it, Marcus told Rebecca after my restaurant scene. Even if he has evidence, nobody's going to believe a word he says now. The PTSD angle was genius, Rebecca agreed. People expect veterans to crack under pressure. It explains away anything he might try to expose. We should still be careful. Crazy doesn't mean stupid. Marcus, he knelt in a cemetery talking to a gravestone while people filmed him. He's destroyed his own credibility completely. They were so confident in their manipulation that they started planning their future openly. Rebecca had already contacted a real estate agent about selling the house. Marcus was researching tropical locations where American expats could live comfortably on insurance payouts. 6 more weeks until the insurance clears, Rebecca said during one recorded conversation. Then we disappear forever. What about Jake? What about him? He'll be in psychiatric care or prison for harassment. Either way, he won't be our problem anymore. They dismissed me as a broken soldier whose grief made him easy to manipulate. They had no idea that every unstable outburst was carefully calculated, every public breakdown designed to make them reveal more of their plan. But the most damning evidence came when they thought they were completely safe. Chin's listening devices picked up a conversation between Rebecca and Marcus at 2 a.m., 3 weeks after my breakdown started. They were drunk on wine and success, celebrating how perfectly their plan had worked. I still can't believe how easy it was, Rebecca laughed. Emma never even saw it coming. Kid was so trusting, Marcus agreed. Drank that milk right down, said thank you like a good little girl. The look on her face when she realized the door was locked, though. She got what she deserved. Little brat thought she could control our lives forever. Sometimes I wonder if we should have made it slower. More painful. Don't get greedy, babe. We pulled off the perfect murder. Emma's dead, Jake's discredited, and we're about to be rich. They were laughing about torturing my daughter, discussing her final moments like it was entertainment. The recording captured everything. Their complete lack of remorse, their pleasure in Emma's suffering, their contempt for the father they'd manipulated into appearing mentally unstable. It was more than enough to destroy them both. The final phase of the trap required perfect timing. I needed them to feel so secure that they'd make one last mistake, something so arrogant and callous that even their carefully constructed public image couldn't survive it. So I gave them exactly what they wanted. I had Tony call Rebecca again, this time with news that I'd been arrested for disorderly conduct and was being held for psychiatric evaluation. The doctors think he needs long-term treatment, Tony told her. He's been ranting about conspiracies and revenge plots. They're recommending indefinite commitment. Oh, thank God, Rebecca breathed, forgetting to sound concerned. I mean, I'm glad he's getting help. You and Marcus should probably stay away from him completely. The doctors say any contact could trigger violent episodes. Of course, we just want him to get better. But what Rebecca didn't know was that my arrest was completely fabricated. I was sitting in Tony's apartment, listening to her genuine relief that the grieving father was finally out of her way. Within hours, Rebecca and Marcus were celebrating publicly. They went to expensive restaurants, bought luxury items, and acted like people who'd just won the lottery instead of attended their victim's funeral weeks earlier. The trap was complete. They'd revealed their true nature, confessed to premeditated murder, and destroyed any sympathy the public might have had for their situation. Now all that remained was springing it shut. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning while Rebecca and Marcus were having breakfast at the Riverside Cafe, celebrating what they thought was their final victory over the crazy veteran who'd threatened their perfect crime. Special Agent Sarah Chun of the FBI's Crimes Against Children Unit walked into that restaurant with 12 federal agents, 4 military police officers, and enough evidence to put Rebecca and Marcus away for life. The local news crews I'd anonymously tipped off captured every moment. Rebecca Morrison and Marcus Denton, you're under arrest for the premeditated murder of Emma Morrison, conspiracy to commit murder, insurance fraud, and child endangerment. Agent Chun announced loud enough for every patron to hear. Rebecca's coffee cup shattered on the floor. Marcus tried to run, making it exactly 4 steps before 2 agents tackled him to the ground. The woman who'd played the grieving mother so perfectly for weeks was suddenly screaming obscenities that would have made Emma cover her ears. "This is insane," Rebecca shrieked as they cuffed her. "Jake Morrison is mentally ill. He's been stalking us. This is harassment. Ma'am, we have recorded confessions from both of you detailing how you murdered your 8-year-old daughter for insurance money," Agent Chen replied calmly. "Your ex-husband's mental health is not relevant to this investigation." The restaurant erupted in chaos. Other diners scrambled to get away from the murderers they'd been unknowingly eating breakfast beside. Rebecca's perfect public image crumbled in real time as news cameras captured her being dragged away in handcuffs, screaming about conspiracies and unstable veterans. I watched it all from Tony's surveillance van parked across the street, finally allowing myself to smile for the first time since Emma died. The evidence we'd gathered was overwhelming. Emma's recorded confessions provided the prosecution with both motive and method. The surveillance footage showed Rebecca and Marcus spending Emma's college fund while publicly mourning her death. Marcus's drunk texts contained detailed admissions about sedating Emma and setting the fire. But the most damning evidence came from their own mouths during those late-night conversations Chun had recorded. Hearing Rebecca laugh about Emma's final moments, listening to Marcus joke about a child's terror, those recordings destroyed any possibility of claiming the murder was unpremeditated or accidental. The arraignment was a media circus. Rebecca's family hired expensive lawyers who immediately tried to paint her as a victim of domestic abuse, claiming Marcus had coerced her into participating in Emma's murder. Marcus's public defender attempted to argue temporary insanity, suggesting grief over his own childhood trauma had driven him to violence. Neither strategy worked. The recorded conversations proved both defendants were calculating, cold-blooded killers who'd planned Emma's death for months. The defendants didn't snap under pressure, federal prosecutor James Wright told the packed courtroom during opening statements. They systematically planned the murder of an innocent child whose only crime was inconveniencing their relationship. They researched methods, purchased supplies, established alibis, and executed their plan with chilling precision. Emma's voice recordings played in court brought the entire gallery to tears. Hearing my daughter document her own approaching murder, her desperate attempts to gather evidence that would bring her killers to justice, transformed public opinion completely. Rebecca was no longer the sympathetic, grieving mother. She was a monster who'd betrayed the most sacred bond in human society, the protection of her own child. The defense tried to exclude Emma's recordings, arguing an 8-year-old couldn't have understood the significance of what she was documenting. The judge shut that down immediately. This child demonstrated remarkable courage and intelligence in her final weeks, Judge Patricia Williams stated. Her recordings represent dying declarations from a murder victim. They will be admitted in full. When the prosecution played the recording of Rebecca and Marcus laughing about Emma's final moments, even their own lawyers looked sick. Several jurors were crying openly. Rebecca's sister Jennifer stormed out of the courtroom, publicly disowning her sibling. "I don't know the woman sitting at that defense table," Jennifer told reporters outside. "My sister loved Emma. The Rebecca I knew would never have hurt that little girl." But the evidence proved otherwise. Phone records showed Rebecca researching Emma's life insurance policy the same week she'd started dating Marcus. Financial records revealed she'd been in crushing debt, facing foreclosure and bankruptcy. Emma's death wasn't a crime of passion, it was a calculated business decision. Marcus's testimony backfired spectacularly. He tried to blame everything on Rebecca, claiming she'd manipulated him into believing Emma was a threat to their relationship. But his own recorded conversations proved he'd been the driving force behind the murder plot. "She was just a kid," he said from the witness stand, attempting to show remorse. "Maybe we could have found another way." "Another way to do what, Mr. Denton?" Prosecutor Wright asked. To solve the problem. The problem being an 8-year-old girl who loved her father and wanted her family back together. Marcus's silence was answer enough. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours. When they returned, the forewoman's voice was steady and clear. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Emma Morrison, we find the defendant Rebecca Morrison guilty. On the charge of first-degree murder in the death of Emma Morrison, we find the defendant Marcus Denon guilty. Rebecca collapsed at the defense table. Marcus stared straight ahead, finally understanding that his perfect crime had become his perfect downfall. Judge Williams sentenced them both to life without possibility of parole, plus additional consecutive sentences for conspiracy and fraud. She made sure to note Emma's courage during the sentencing. This court has rarely seen such bravery from a child facing impossible circumstances, she said. Emma Morrison died trying to protect other children from suffering the same fate. Her killers showed no mercy to an innocent child, and this court will show none to them. As they led Rebecca and Marcus away in shackles, Rebecca finally broke character completely. She screamed at me across the courtroom. "You destroyed everything." Emma was just one stupid kid. Even in defeat, she couldn't hide her true nature. Emma had been right about everything. Her coded message had started the investigation that brought her killers to justice. Her hidden recordings had provided the evidence that convicted them. Her courage in those final moments had saved other children from the same fate. My daughter had solved her own murder from beyond the grave. The conviction brought justice, but it couldn't bring back my daughter. Justice never does. It just ensures that the people who destroyed your world can't destroy anyone else's. 3 months after Rebecca and Marcus were sentenced to life in prison, I found myself standing in the cemetery again, but this time I wasn't talking to Emma's gravestone. I was talking to the woman kneeling beside it, placing fresh flowers on my daughter's grave. "You must be Jake," she said, looking up with tear-filled eyes. "I'm Maria Santos. Emma saved my daughter's life." I knelt beside her, studying the flowers she'd brought, sunflowers, Emma's favorites. "I don't understand. Rebecca was dating my ex-husband before she met Marcus," Maria explained. "She was researching life insurance policies on my daughter Sophia too. When Emma's case went public, I realized Rebecca had been planning the same thing for my little girl." The weight of those words hit me like a physical blow. Emma hadn't just been Rebecca's first victim. She would have been the first of many. "Sophia is safe now," Maria continued. "She's living with my sister in California while I rebuild our lives. But if Emma hadn't been brave enough to leave that evidence, if you hadn't fought for justice." She couldn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. Emma's courage had created a ripple effect that saved children she'd never met, families she'd never know. Over the following weeks, more families came forward. The FBI investigation into Rebecca's background revealed a pattern of relationships with single fathers, always targeting families with substantial life insurance policies on their children. Emma's murder had been Rebecca's practice run for a larger scheme that could have destroyed dozens of families. That's when I knew what I had to do with the rest of my life. The Emma Morrison Foundation launched 6 months after the trial, funded by the life insurance money Rebecca had tried to steal and Emma's college fund that I could never use for its original purpose. Our mission was simple: protect military children from domestic violence and ensure no child's cry for help goes unheard. Tony left the military police to become our security director. Martinez quit private security to head our investigations unit. Chin used his tech skills to develop communication systems that would help endangered children contact authorities safely. We created the Emma Protocol, a system that taught military families about hidden danger signs and gave children multiple ways to report abuse. Emma's story became the foundation of our training materials, showing kids that being smart and brave could save not just their own lives, but the lives of others. The Foundation's first major case came 8 months after we opened. A 10-year-old Navy dependent named David contacted our hotline using the same coded message system Emma had developed. His stepfather had been escalating from emotional abuse to physical violence, and David's mother was too intimidated to seek help. Within 24 hours, our team had documented the abuse, connected the family with safe housing, and ensured David's stepfather was arrested before he could seriously injure anyone. David's mother later told us that learning about Emma's courage had inspired her son to speak up instead of suffering in silence. Emma showed him that kids can be heroes too, she said. That sometimes children have to protect themselves when adults fail them. The foundation grew rapidly, supported by military families, veteran organizations, and civilians who'd been moved by Emma's story. We opened offices in 12 states, created partnerships with Child Protective Services, and trained thousands of people to recognize the warning signs Emma had tried to communicate before her death. But the most meaningful moment came on Emma's 9th birthday, the birthday she never got to celebrate. The foundation held its first annual Emma's Heroes ceremony, recognizing children who'd shown extraordinary courage in protecting themselves or others from danger. 23 kids received awards that first year. Each one had used the Emma protocol or similar tactics to escape dangerous situations. They ranged in age from 6 to 16, representing every branch of military service and dozens of civilian families. As I presented each award, I thought about Emma watching from wherever brave souls go when their work on Earth is finished. She would have been so proud to know that her final act of courage had inspired an entire generation of children to protect themselves and each other. The ceremony ended with a reading of Emma's last message, not the coded cry for help she'd sent me, but the final entry in her journal, discovered months after the trial. If something bad happens to me, I want Daddy to know it wasn't his fault. Daddies who fight wars can't protect everyone all the time, but they try their best. If I don't make it, tell other kids that being scared is okay, but giving up isn't. Sometimes kids have to save themselves, and that's okay too. Love, Emma Morrison, age 8, future detective. She'd known she might not survive, but she'd refused to let her death be meaningless. Emma had turned her murder into a mission that would protect countless other children from the same fate. Standing in that ceremony hall, surrounded by kids who were alive because my daughter had been brave enough to document her own murder, I finally understood what healing looked like. It wasn't forgetting Emma or moving past her death. It was ensuring that her courage lived on in every child we saved, every family we protected, every predator we stopped before they could destroy another innocent life. Emma had died fighting for justice. The foundation would ensure that fight never ended. 5 years after Emma's death, I stood in the courtroom where Rebecca and Marcus had been sentenced, but this time I wasn't seeking justice. I was delivering it. The Emma Morrison Child Protection Act had just passed Congress with unanimous bipartisan support. The legislation mandated background checks for anyone moving into homes with military dependents, created federal databases to track suspected child abusers across state lines, and established the Emma Protocol as standard training for all military families. This law will save lives, Senator Patricia Williams told the packed gallery. Emma Morrison's courage in her final moments has created a legacy that will protect children for generations to come. The foundation had grown beyond anything I'd imagined possible. We now operated in all 50 states and had partnerships with military bases worldwide. The Emma Protocol had been translated into dozens of languages and adapted for civilian use by school districts, community organizations, and law enforcement agencies. But numbers couldn't capture what Emma had really accomplished. The true measure of her legacy lived in the faces of the children who were still alive because she'd been brave enough to leave evidence of her murder. Children like Sarah Chun, the 7-year-old Air Force dependent whose stepfather had been planning to kill her for insurance money. Sarah used Emma's recording techniques to document his threats, leading to his arrest before he could act. Children like Michael Rodriguez, the Marine's son who recognized the same pattern of abuse Emma had described and contacted our hotline before his situation became deadly. Children like Ashley Thompson, the Army daughter who survived a house fire that investigators initially called accidental, until our foundation's evidence showed it was actually an attempted murder that failed because Ashley remembered Emma's escape techniques. Dozens of kids, then hundreds, then thousands. Each one alive because Emma had refused to die silently. The foundation's success attracted national attention, but also brought new challenges. We received threats from people who claimed we were destroying families by investigating abuse allegations. Some military spouses complained that background checks violated their privacy. A few politicians tried to defund our programs, arguing that military families should handle their problems internally. Every attack on our mission felt like another assault on Emma's memory, but it also proved how necessary our work had become. Predators always resist efforts to expose them. Their opposition validated everything we were fighting for. The most meaningful recognition came from an unexpected source. Rebecca Morrison, now serving her life sentence in federal prison, requested a meeting with me through her attorney. Prison had not made her repentant. It had made her bitter and desperate. "I want to make a deal," Rebecca said when we sat across from each other in the prison visiting room. "I have information about other women, other plans. Things that could help your foundation." "What kind of information?" "Names, methods, connections. There's a network, Jake. Women who specifically target military families because the fathers are deployed and can't protect their children." The revelation hit me like ice water. Emma's murder hadn't been an isolated crime. It had been part of a larger predatory network that viewed military children as easy targets. "What do you want in return?" I asked. "Transfer to minimum security. Better privileges. Maybe parole consideration in 20 years. I looked at this woman who'd murdered my daughter for money and was now trying to profit from information that could save other children's lives. The old me, the father consumed by grief and rage, would have walked away and let her rot with her secrets. But Emma had taught me that justice meant more than punishment. It meant protection. "Give me the information first," I said. "Prove it's valuable. Then we'll talk about what you might get in return." Over the next 6 months, Rebecca's information led to the arrest of 12 women and 7 men across 8 states. The network had been operating for almost a decade, targeting military families with substantial life insurance policies on their children. They'd successfully murdered at least 16 children while making their deaths look accidental. Emma's evidence and the Foundation's investigative work had exposed the entire conspiracy. Rebecca never got her deal. The information she provided was valuable, but she'd offered it too late and for the wrong reasons. She remained in maximum security, serving life without parole for murdering the daughter who'd ultimately destroyed her criminal network. Marcus died in prison 3 years after his conviction, killed by inmates who'd learned about his crimes against Emma. Prison justice had delivered what civilian courts couldn't, the ultimate punishment for someone who'd tortured a child. I felt nothing when I heard about his death. Not satisfaction, not closure, just emptiness. Emma's killers were gone, but Emma was still gone too. The real healing came from the children who were still alive, still laughing, still growing up because my daughter had been brave enough to fight for them in her final moments. On Emma's 10th birthday, the Foundation unveiled her memorial in Arlington National Cemetery. The inscription read simply, "Emma Morrison, age 8. Daughter, hero, protector." Sometimes kids have to save themselves, and that's okay too. Thousands of people attended the dedication ceremony. Military families, Foundation supporters, government officials, and most importantly, the children Emma had saved. They placed flowers at her memorial, shared stories of how her courage had inspired them, and promised to carry on her mission of protection. As the ceremony ended and crowds began to disperse, I remained beside Emma's memorial, finally ready to say the words I'd needed to speak for 5 years. "I kept my promise, baby girl. I saved the others, just like you asked. Your courage lives on in every child we protect, every family we keep safe, every predator we stop before they can hurt anyone else. You were braver than any soldier I ever served with, smarter than any detective I ever knew, and stronger than any hero in the books we used to read together. I miss you every day, but I'm not sad anymore, because I know that somewhere, In ways I can't fully understand, you're still fighting for justice. Still protecting the innocent. Still being the hero you always were. The wind picked up, rustling the flags around her memorial, and for just a moment, I could swear I heard Emma's voice carried on the breeze. I love you to the moon and back, Daddy. Keep saving the others. Emma Morrison died at 8 years old, but her legacy would live forever. In every child who refused to suffer in silence. In every adult who listened when kids tried to ask for help. In every family that stayed safe because a little girl had been brave enough to fight back against monsters. She had become exactly what she'd always dreamed of being. A protector of the innocent, a seeker of truth, and a hero whose courage would inspire generations. My daughter was gone, but Emma's work would never end.